Raf, Mac is saying that they weren't awful. I imagine maybe you disagree slightly.
I thought they were quite awful, certainly in the first half. This was a Germany team that didn't turn up. And it was interesting because we were talking about this before the start of the tournament, where similar performances were seen and we're being worried about. And Löw was telling us, don't worry, come the World Cup, suddenly everything's going to be fine. In effect, those performances, those problems repeated themselves. The lack of cutting edge, the slow tempo, lots of easy balls being lost, and then a real lack of cohesion when it comes to recovering. No transition game whatsoever. 50 meters of space when they lost the ball up front, and then the back four, and suddenly, sometimes only even two from the back four left by themselves to hold the fort. Plus, another thing that was really interesting, all the Germany players afterwards coming out and saying, we were totally surprised. We were briefed, I mean, they didn't say it, but they kind of hinted it. We were briefed that Mexico were going to press really high and then play possession football. But they did the opposite. They pressed very deep and then played counter-attack. So they took a whole 45 minutes to get to grips with it. And in the second half, it was too late because they couldn't quite find the final ball yet again.
I don't know whether they were, but when it changes, if the opposition don't do what you expect them to do, you have to adapt to it. And that comes down to the coach on the side of the field. And he must have been talking to the players on the side of the field when they were losing possession in quite high areas and the midfield players from Mexico were winning it back. When the ball was played forward, for the goal, the player that was tracking back was Mesut Ozil. Probably the only time he ever has tracked back, and he ends up in the right back position because Kimmich was nowhere in the picture. The centre-halves at times, I mean, Hummels made some bad decisions when to go into midfield and close people down, so he was played around. And Raf is right, the cohesion and the recovery runs, most football games now are won when the ball changes hands. And Mexico were better when the ball changed hands than Germany were.
Them being exposed at the back was mentioned by Hummels after the match. He said if 7 or 8 players attack, then it's clear the offensive force is greater than the defensive stability. That's what I often talk about internally, to no effect. Our cover wasn't good too often. It was just Jerome and I at the back.
That's a good game, that, lads. Did you see what he was doing in the first goal? How about coming out and saying, look, I'm sorry, I totally threw myself, gambled on a challenge, got done on a 1-2. And by the way, I was sat on my backside when the ball hit the back of the net.
That's not a great sign, is it? That when he comes out and starts criticising other people already.
He's the guy who's sitting there watching it all. He's the guy who should be able to read it. Listen, he takes all the plaudits when he does well. I'll tell you what, he was horrible in this game.
Who's he criticising? The other players, or is he criticising his manager as well? That's what you don't know.
He's certainly not criticising himself.
Raf, how have these quotes gone down in Germany?
Well, as you'd expect. I mean, Germans are very, very unhappy, very shocked. They didn't expect the performance. They haven't seen a Germany team lose, I think, since 1966 in an opening game. So this is, a fairly novel feeling and not one that's being cherished because it puts real pressure on Germany. It's good enough. I mean, it's no problem saying they will still qualify, but what happens next? If they finish second in the group, despite Brazil's draw, they will probably meet Brazil in the last 16. And the way that Germany are going at the moment, very slowly, perhaps growing into the tournament if you want to be charitable to them, that's not a great time to meet them. So it's already a damaged, start to the World Cup, and it could get worse if they don't get the result next time round.
Let's check out your player ratings, shall we, Raf? I imagine they're rather low. Khedira 3, I think, is the lowest of them all. Kruse, Özil, Werner 5. The back 4 get 6s. Muller with a 4 as well. Do you agree with these, Stevie?
I'm not sure Hummels and Boateng should be getting 6, as I said. They're the base from which Germany build, and they're the base from which Germany defend. And really, they certainly didn't do an awful lot of good defending, that's for sure.
Sami Khedira had a shocker, didn't he?
He did. As I've seen him play for Juventus a lot this season, he's not the athlete he once was. He can't get up and down the field. He's not a particularly good passer of the ball. He was always picked for his dynamism. Now he hasn't got that dynamism. I'm not sure what he's in the side to do.
So, Raf, what changes can we expect going forward? Because you imagine there will be some sort of reaction, surely.
Well, I think Löw has to realise that Kroos and Khedira, even with better positioning, better overall setup, cannot hold the centre by themselves. It's not really their game, especially Khedira. His legs have gone. He tried to run away from people, couldn't do it, ran into cul-de-sacs, turned over possession. Germany really suffered. So I think 2 options. Either you replace Khedira with Gundogan and play a more measured game, try to keep possession better, try to have the front four come a bit deeper and help out the midfield, or do what they did in 2014 when they had issues, play a third central midfielder. You don't really have a proper number 6, but you could play Sebastian Rudy there, you can play Goretzka there in the Khedira role as a scuttler. I think that might be an option just to give a bit of stability to this team, because you cannot have these open spaces. The reason why I gave reasonable grades to Hummels and Boateng is because you saw what happened to those guys. They were just the loneliest guys, no one around them. They were forced into making crazy challenges at the halfway line. As a centre-back, you don't want to defend at the halfway line. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. They were completely lost, and that's why I gave them reasonable marks.
Why are you playing those phases?
I think Ralph's been a little bit generous to those two. I mean, you know, when you're the last guy, the last thing you do, the very last thing you do is gamble and throw yourself in the halfway line. You stay on your feet, you try and hold the forward or whoever it is coming at you up until it gives the other defenders or midfielders or somebody time to get back. And Hummels on that first goal was schoolboy, absolute schoolboy defending. So I think, Ralph, you've been a little nice to Hummels.
Ralph?
I'm not, and I'll tell you the reason why, because Hummels had to at times, and Boateng too, had to make that run because there was the third guy already. If you push off, the guy in front of it takes it, and he has 2 or 3 runners. He can just play an easy ball. They had to win that early ball, that crazy ball, time and time again, because there were people running off them. It wasn't just a 1v1, it was 2v3, 2v4. They had to make these really ridiculous challenges, and they were about to get caught. It was inevitable, so I wouldn't really give them such a hard time for that.